Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to start out with Doug Buffone, who died recently at the age of 70, one of my favorite Chicago athletes. What a great guy Doug Buffone was. Great football player, a good guy, and a funny guy. He was an outside linebacker for the Bears for 14 years, from 66 to 79. And in fact, when he retired, he played in more football games than any other Chicago Bear, although that record's been broken since then. Doug was a nice Italian Catholic boy from western Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh, son of a coal miner. A lot of tough football players from there. He was a great three-sport athlete in high school and went to the University of Louisville, where he starred in football. He's actually still in their top 5 in tackles all time. As I said, he starred for the Bears for 14 years. He was never an all-star. He's not a candidate for the Hall of Fame, but he should be, and the reason is because he was a victim of bad luck on 2 counts. The first count was he was the outside linebacker where Dick Butkus, perhaps the greatest linebacker of all times, was the middle linebacker, and it was hard to see how good Buffone was when you were watching Butkus just take people apart. The second reason was he played for some of the worst Bear teams of all time. He played from 66, right after their championship team of the early 60s and 63, and he played until 79, right before their championship team of the early 80s and 85. Despite the fact he covered the field so well, almost every team he was on was a losing team, primarily because of their offense, not their defense. Here's an NFL report on Doug Buffone when he announced his retirement.
The 80s will go on without Captain Doug Buffone, a Chicago fixture for a decade and a half. Announcing his retirement in December, Buffone leaves the Chicago defense a legacy that includes dedication to team and a whatever-it-takes attitude.
Boy, that's really true. Here are 2 plays he made late in his career. The first is a run off a fake punt.
Well, he's hit from 55, has Thomas, but right now it looks like those flags are blowing towards him, so he'd be kicking into kind of a gusting wind. Oh, right back gets the ball. They go to the run. And Doug Buffone, the man they call the Papa Bear of this team, a veteran linebacker. Look at this. For 8 years, the defensive captain of the Chicago Bears, Doug Buffone, in his 13th year, gets a moment in the sun.
He's been a great player. He's been a very instrumental part of the city, and it's great to see him make a big play.
Only 6 linebackers in NFL history have played in more games than Doug Buffone.
Yeah, you'd think that'd be worth something toward the Hall of Fame. The second play, he caught a pass off a fake punt in his final game as a Bear.
Well, the Bears have added another element of emotion today. Their great linebacker, Doug Buffone, announced his retirement yesterday after playing the most number of games in Bear history. Today, he is being introduced as the 12th man on the Chicago Bears. And listen to the ovation he gets from the crowd here at Soldier Field. Doug Buffone playing his last game as a Bear, and he's playing it in conditions that are typical of Chicago in December. It is 18 degrees. It is windy, a wind chill factor of -14. Parsons going to throw off the punt formation to Buffone. Buffone has the first down. Doug Buffone inside the 30. Dave Steep knocked him out of bounds at the 27-yard line. Well, Parsons and Buffone had a couple of tries at it, and they made it connect on the second one.
But a lot of younger Chicagoans know Doug Buffone because he was a great sports analyst on talk radio. He was paired for a while with Norm Van Leer in a great show called The Bull and the Bear. He was paired with Dan Jiggets, but his best pairing was with another Bear great, Ed O'Bradovich, a hero of the 1963 Bears. They had a call-in radio talk show, and when the Bears lost, they would just go off, especially on the Packers. Buffone had a special animus for the Packers because Vince Lombardi, a fellow Italian Catholic, used to make fun of his name, Buffo, Buffone, or Clown. It was good-natured, but as you will hear, Doug just couldn't contain himself when they would lose to the Packers.
Very difficult to score when your offense is on the bench. When your defense is out there giving up 70, 80, 70, 64-yard drives and taking up the time, you don't have the damn ball to do anything with it. And that's Bobby Smith's fault, too. He's calling those damn defenses. I'm not calling them. Ed's not calling them. He's calling them. And it's about time you start calling what the hell's going on out there. And this is not the first game. This happened in Detroit. This happened in Cincinnati. You tell me what's going on out there when that team can take a football and drive it down your throat. At least hold them to a field goal. This is moronic. We're going to get our whipped all the way down the line. I've had it. I have had it. I want somebody to get kicked in the and get out there and play. You're getting paid to play this game and play it right. I don't mind you getting beat. I got my whipped many times, but I tell you, I took somebody down with me. And that's what I want to see. Not today. Not like this what happened today. This defense sucks. You are a professional team. Act like one, for God's sakes.
Yeah, this team is soft as a grape. This team is not very tough. This team is not physically tough. And to say no and to get everybody together, like I keep saying, Trustman will get all the guys together, they'll put their arms around each other and go, kumbaya, sit down and ask, hey, listen, you know, how's the family? What's going on here? What'd you eat last night for dinner? That makes us a team. That doesn't make you a team. He doesn't do a damn thing with these guys. You can talk all you want to talk about. He doesn't do anything about it.
Well, what I'm trying to tell you,
I don't see anybody out there busting their ass at all. There's not one guy I'd take out of that team right now. If I was starting a new team over with, there's not one guy I'd grab. Not one. And what the hell does that tell you? The fact is there's not the fear put into them because this game is a lot about fear. You either do the job or you go home and go sell hamburgers at McDonald's. That's exactly what it is. And that's not what they're doing. They're the one dictating what's happening up there. You can't go into a football game, like Ed said, with this urgency that this football game means so much, not only for your standings, but for it's the Green Bay Packers, and you got your ass whipped by New England real bad 2 weeks ago, and you're going to walk into that field and say, oh, yeah, boy, we had some great practices last week. You know, we sat around the cafeteria and we all shared a hamburger. Okay, give me a break.
That's courtesy of WSCR. Doug Buffone, a memorable guy. We're going to move on now to Mary Doyle Keefe, who died recently at the age of 92. She was one of the Rosie the Riveters during World War II. There were a number of Rosie the Riveters. Mary wasn't the first. In fact, she wasn't even a riveter. She was a telephone operator who later became a dental hygienist. But she posed for Norman Rockwell in a famous cover of the Saturday Evening Post that was published Memorial Day weekend of 1943. Rockwell gave her $5 for 2 mornings of posing. She is not the we can do it girl with the flexed muscle and the we can do it caption that she's commonly confused with. Rockwell gave her a Michelangelo Sistine Chapel-like pose and buffed her up, put a rivet gun on her lap and a copy of Mein Kampf under her feet behind a background of a flag. Here's a CNN report on Mary Doyle Keefe.
The woman who became Norman Rockwell's Rosie the Riveter, the symbol of American women working on the home front during World War II, has died at the age of 92. She was paid $10 to pose for Rockwell's iconic painting, which showed a woman with her sleeves rolled up, rivet gun on her lap, and eating a sandwich during a break. The image debuted on the Saturday Evening Post in May 1943.
Rosie the River was an iconic figure during World War II, and the concept was actually the vanguard for female empowerment and feminism that became a part of American culture in the second half of the 20th century. Here's the History Channel on the history of Rosie the Riveter.
She starred in a famous World War II-era propaganda campaign and eventually became one of the most famous icons in American history. But who exactly was Rosie the Riveter? And what's the real story behind her well-known image? To start with, it's not really about a riveter named Rosie. It's not even about one woman, but about millions. After the United States entered World War II in late 1941, government and industrial leaders called on American women to join the workforce in order to replace manpower lost when men enlisted as soldiers. Some 6 million would answer that call. Between 1940 and 1945, the female demographic of the national workforce increased from 27% to nearly 37%. Half of these working women took on tough jobs in defense industries. Rosie was first introduced to the public in a popular song called Rosie the Riveter, released in early 1943. The song was made famous by swing band leader James Kern K. Kaiser. Norman Rockwell had undoubtedly heard the song when he painted a female riveter on her lunch break for the Memorial Day issue of the Saturday Evening Post that year. Posed like the prophet Isaiah in Michelangelo's famous fresco on the Sistine Chapel ceiling, she rests her foot on a battered copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf. Her riveting gun rests on her lap, while her lunchbox clearly reads Rosie. Rockwell's model was a dental hygienist named Mary Keefe, but was there a real Rosie the Riveter? After Rockwell's cover appeared on newsstands, the press lost no time in casting real-life Rosies. One of the most well-known was Rose Will Monroe, who worked as a riveter of B-24 and B-49 bomber airplanes at the Willow Run Aircraft Factory in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Monroe appeared in a promotional video for war bonds after a chance run-in with a Hollywood actor filming at the factory. But Rosie the Riveter was bigger than just one woman. She was a symbol of the wartime work and sacrifice of millions. Though Rockwell's painting was the original depiction of Rosie, she is most widely identified with a different image. In 1942, the year before the Rosie song was released, the Westinghouse Power Company commissioned J. Howard Miller to create a promotional poster that would boost morale among its employees. The now famous poster featured a bandana-clad woman flexing her arm muscles under the slogan, "We can do it." Due to copyright restrictions on Rockwell's work, Miller's "We Can Do It" poster was adopted by the feminist movement of the 1980s as a modern symbol of female empowerment. It is now the image most commonly associated with Rosie. From wartime propaganda to feminist symbol, Rosie has remained a riveting icon in American history.
Kay Kaiser's version of Rosie the Riveter is a little slow, so I'm going to play a version by the Four Vagabonds, a black harmony group of the early 40s that should be better known than they are. They used their voices as musical instruments a lot, which was useful during the musicians' strike of 42 to 44. Here's their version of Rosie the Riveter.
All the day long, where the rain or shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie the Riveter keeps a sharp lookout for sabotage, sitting up there on the fuselage. That little Fred can do more than a male can do. Rosie the Riveter.
They're not as well known as the Mills Brothers or the Ink Spots, but the Four Vagabonds were pretty good. I want to move on in a slightly different direction to Professor M.H. Abrams, who died recently at the age of 102. He was a professor of literature at Cornell for over 60 years, one of the world's experts in literary criticism, romanticism, and the editor of the Norton Anthology of English Literature, a staple for decades. His 1953 book, The Mirror and the Lamp, is a classic in the understanding of the history and the development of literature. Here he talks about the four dimensions of a poem, using as his example the best-known work of a fellow Cornell professor, Vladimir Nabokov.
One is the appearance of the poem in print, as you now see it on the page before you. The visible aspect, which signals that you are to read the text as a poem, not as prose, and also offers visual cues as to the pace, pause, stops, and intonation of your reading. A second dimension is the sounds of the words when they are read aloud, or if they are read silently, the sounds as they are imagined by the reader. A third, and by far the most important dimension, is the meaning of the words that we read or hear. The fourth dimension. To explain that enigmatic title, I'll begin by quoting the opening paragraph of a novel written while its author was a professor here at Cornell. Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul. Lolita. The tip of the tongue taking a trip of 3 steps down the palate to tap at 3 on the teeth. Lolita. Humbert's obsession with Lolita has sensitized him to a fact to which we are ordinarily oblivious. That is, that the use of language involves a physical component, the oral actions of producing the words we utter, and that by attending to them, we can become aware of the mobile and tactile sensations of performing these actions.
I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps, and we're going to close tonight with Betty Willis, who died recently at the age of 91. After World War II, Las Vegas was the brainchild of Bugsy Siegel, where people came to gamble, and a group of casino owners and civic leaders wanted to erect a roadside welcome sign, as many cities had done in the post-war era. But since it was Las Vegas, there could be nothing ordinary about the sign. And Betty Willis was the designer for Western Neon, who came up with the Welcome to Fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada sign. It's an icon. People come from all over the world to see it. People get married under it. And in 2009, it was listed in the National Register of Historic Places as the best preserved and indeed the most iconic expression of the remarkable ascendancy of post-war Las Vegas and its iconic strip. As a tribute to Betty Willis, what else can we close with but the King?
I'm gonna give it everything I've got. Lady luck, please let the dice stay hot. Let me shoot a 7 with every shot. Viva Las Vegas! Viva Las Vegas! Viva